pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody to tonight's planning board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exits, which is to the left of the room. In the event of emergency, please move in a calm and orderly fashion down the stairs and do not use the elevator. The meetings are recorded by the secretary for the purposes of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each time you come to the podium and speak into the microphone. The board will follow the items in the order they appear on the agenda, extra copies which are near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant and/or representative shall come to the podium, identify him or herself, give his or her address, and then present their case. The planning board members will then have an opportunity to question the applicant. If this case is a public hearing, it will be open for public input, at which time anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding the application will come to the podium, identify themselves along with their address, and direct any questions to the board. Once all public input has been completed, the applicant or site representative will be given the opportunity to respond to any of the public input. Once all public input has been completed and all questions have been satisfied, the case will be closed to the public input, and the board will then move on to decision. No further input would be allowed at that time. And with that, Michelle, could you please call the first case?
Thank you. First item, or only item on the agenda this evening, is case number PB 1703-1, upon the matter of request by Ken and Ron Bohr for revised site plan approval to install an 8-foot-high chain link fence with privacy slats on premises 30 Dubelbice Lane, Spinrite Inc., in an M manufacturing district.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Ken, and this is my brother Ron
I'm Ron. Nice to meet you all.
at 30 Dubelbice Lane, Spinrite Inc. We are here tonight to propose a fence, obviously, for you guys. Given about 2 months ago, we decided we wanted to put a fence up. We had a string of break-ins in our lot. One of my trucks was broken into, tools stolen out of it, scanners, all for work. They also tried stealing, actually, one of our loaders. We tried firing it up, couldn't figure out how to fire it up, took the keys out and ran with it. We have pictures of them
Pictures taken from our security.
from our security cameras of them over there. Problem is, you can't really get a good identification of who they are. So we pondered for a while and decided, you know what, we kind of just want to revamp everything, chain everything up, and lock ourselves in.
I think essentially we're just looking for peace of mind because there has been break-ins in that area over the past couple of years after we talked with a couple of the surrounding neighbors.
Okay. With that, if there's any questions from the board, we start with, anything more? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
No, please go right ahead.
Okay. Mr. Eagle?
It's a fence.
Correct.
You're getting, your trucks are being broken into, stuff's being stolen. You want to put up a fence and make it look nice? I don't have any problem with any of that. So I'm fine with it.
The only thing I had, which was really addressed by the fire chief, just, I don't know if you guys got the email, but just make it record that fire chief basically said that he will cut the lock if he needs to get in. If you want to provide a Knox box, you can, but he'll just cut the lock if they need to gain access to the property. The only other thing that I was a little bit concerned with at the workshop meeting was just the location of the fence based on the older survey that you guys had.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you mentioned something earlier. Maybe you want to just make
Yeah.
comment to that.
Actually, coincidence being, our neighbor at 28 Dubelbice, about 2 months ago as well, thought about putting a fence up on his own. So he ended up getting a stakeout done for his lot lines to find out where they were. So actually, everything was already, there's already stakes in the ground, markers of showing where his lot lines are, and we plan on staying roughly a foot off of that to make sure we're on our property going forward. And then for the chain link gate and everything, I have no problem with him just cutting the lock. It's a little bit cheaper than a Knox box, so
Yep.
that's fine with us.
Okay, those are my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Hops?
Good evening. Just have two questions for you. I noticed you guys have three trailers there, like a enclosed trailer, 24-footer, and then you got an equipment trailer there, and that old grader that's sitting there. It's been sitting there a while. So my one of my two questions is being with trailers, putting a fence there, being a fellow commercial driver, how would you, what flow would you do to back those trailers down there to get them into that spot? Because, right now you can pull the trailers down, do a little U-turn, then back them in. But when you put that fence there, it's going to be pretty tight there to back those trailers in there. So do you have a plan for that? Are you going to be backing down the street or?
Actually, yes. Everything that's gonna be on the south side of the building where that old rusty grader sits right now, that we're trying to get out of there too.
Yeah.
That'll all be cleaned out. We actually own another property in city that we're going to be putting all the dump trucks at. So that whole south side will be open for us to pull the trucks in and then back a trailer in if we need to.
Okay.
But
Yeah, my only
we've-
concern
yeah.
is, I mean, you'd have to back it in off the side road and back it all the way down there. It's kind of tough.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we won't have anything parked on the south side of the building.
Okay.
So we have plenty to turn in and back up.
Perfect. And then last thing, putting a fence in there, it's obviously winter. We get a lot of snow. And, with AP Enterprises right there, I know they're probably doing a lot of the snow removal, a lot of trucks going there. We put a fence in, there's really not a lot of spots to stockpile snow. So would you truck the snow out, or how would you kind of get the snow out of there if you get a lot of snow?
Well, anything on the inside of our fence, we would, when you pull into our property, there's the fire hydrant area right there.
Yeah.
Our parking lot starts right about 20 feet off of that. We stockpile snow there,
Okay.
and we also would put in the back corner on the back side of the building.
Okay.
That way everything would be cleared out.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Solomon?
I think I'm okay with everything.
Yes, you all set? The only questions I have for you are, you mentioned at the bottom, you're going to be doing something within the 2 years.
Correct.
So are you looking for approval now to put the same type of fence up? What are
Well-
you looking for?
Currently, right now, we have a 6-foot stockade wood fence going down, well, what's left of one.
West side.
It's on the west side of the building, adjacent to U-Haul and AccuPave. We are, within the next 2 years, we would like to, because the materials and everything is expensive, and, we have a budget every year. We would like to just take all that wood fence out and replace it with the same matching fence that we are here in front of you for today.
Okay.
So give it, within the next 2 years, roughly, it would be matching fence all the way around.
Right, so I think we have a limitation on how far out we can go. Is that correct?
You do. Your approval would be valid for a year.
Okay.
But then once the building permit's pulled, the building permit could be renewed.
Okay.
So it could work with your time frame as long as you stay on top of the permit expirations and renew them.
Excellent. Okay.
So are we approving it for the complete,
If that's what the applicant would
Is that
like you
what
to
you want?
consider, you certainly
Yes.
could.
so it'll be the
Please.
same fence?
Down the west
Yes.
side.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that before we move? That's all I had. So with that, if you don't mind taking a seat, I'll open it for, you might be able to stay there, open it for public hearing. Anybody who would like to come and address regarding this matter? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Okay. With that, you can take a seat, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we need to do seeker on this, correct?
Correct.
So, anybody like to make the motion? Or you'd like me to? Sure. In regards to, upon the matter of request by Ken and Ron Bohr for revised site plan approval to install 8-foot-high chain link fencing with privacy slats on premises 30 Dubeldois Lane. Did I say that correct?
Everybody says it wrong.
Spinrite Inc. in an M manufacturing district. This would be an unlisted action, negative declaration.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say nay. Nobody, any abstains? None. We have one absent and one fill-in, correct? Okay, somebody like to make a motion?
In regards to public hearing PB 1703-1 upon the matter of request by Ken and Ron Borer for revised site plan approval to install an 8-foot-high chain link fence with privacy slats on premises 30 Dubelbice Lane, Spinrite Incorporated, in an M manufacturing district. I move it as approved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nobody abstains. It passes. You're all set. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck.
Have a good night.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
So, Chairman and board members, we're going to invite you to come down to the front row for the presentation that Tom Robinson is here from Barton and LaJudas to give a brief overview of some of the recommendations that might influence or provide some guidance for future site plan deliberation or consideration that are direct recommendations from our active transportation plan, which is in the final draft stage at this point and is just awaiting GTC, Genesee Transportation Council approval. But at this point, the plan's been circulated to, God bless you. The plan's been circulated to the town board, and then we'll be sharing with all the other boards as well. And this is going to be focused mostly on site-specific or site-related concepts. So we're going to pull the screen down, in which case you will be out of view of the, anyway, you won't be able to see things, so.
But
if you wanna-
before we vacate our
Oh,
chairs up here,
oh, minute.
Oh,
Alan's not here. Can we still do it?
yeah, I think
do we have enough people?
you want to do it right after, or do you want to do it?
You could do it after too, because the meeting's going to need to stay open until after the presentation's done. So everyone's going to have to come back anyway to adjourn.
We'll do it real quick right after. Okay. And those who haven't read it, no, I'm only kidding.
We're talking about approving these minutes. That was great.
The computer's over there, I think. Is that for that? Oh, okay.
Nate's gonna start texting you in a minute. How many staff people does it take to turn this thing on? Let me see.
Who's the electric
Ah, magic.
Oh, like.
Here. The lights. Only if everybody promises not to fall asleep. That's probably, is that good? Is that sufficient?
Oh.
Okay.
Hi, thank you.
Is this okay for everybody? And then, Tom, if you want to grab either there's the mic that's freestanding, or you can stand at the podium, either way.
Yep. I gotta get my clicker going here.
Oh, beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right, can we go to that podium? Okay, it works. Beautiful. Hi. So I'm not here for any site plan approval, but give you a little entertainment here and a little education. My name's Tom Robinson. I'm with Barton and LaJudas, and I've been working with the town of Arundecoit and Cary and Bradley and the whole committee for a little over a year now on the Arundecoit Active Transportation Plan. And some of the things that are in the Active Transportation Plan are very relevant to your responsibilities as planning board members. We'll just go through that. I'm going to give a quick overview of the plan and our process. And then I have some fun pictures of local examples that we can look at and see the good and the bad. So active transportation is simply a means of getting around that's powered by human energy. Primarily walking and riding, but in some circumstances it can be other modes as well. The term active transportation expresses the key connection between healthy, active living, our transportation choices, and sustainable communities. For Arundecoit, if you wanted to put it in a nutshell, the overall project purpose was to enhance the safety, accessibility, and convenience of active transportation options for people of all ages and all mobility levels. So it was really inclusive thinking from day one, and we recognize how transportation choices and activity modes affect everybody through all stages of life. And, we are all disabled in one way or the other at some point in our lives, whether it's just before we learn how to walk or when we get to senior citizen level. So it happens to everybody. If you've ever had an injury and had to be on crutches or in a wheelchair, you've experienced some of the barriers. So accessibility and providing mobility was a big focus of the plan. Arundecoit is one of 9 communities that has active transportation plans funded by the Genesee Transportation Council. We're actually very fortunate to have the Genesee Transportation Council as an NPO in this area because they're very proactive and they have a good structure in place for funding planning relative to bicycle systems and alternative transportation, pedestrian mobility. So of the 9 communities, I've had the good fortune of working on 7 of those plans. We brought a lot of that knowledge and a lot of those lessons learned into Arundecoit to assist with achieving the goals. And overall, there's over 400 centerline miles of roadway studied and recommendations attached to that. So why even bother? Why is active transportation important? Well, there's a whole host of benefits that are very, very well documented now. And in fact, we have continuous streams of data coming in all the time that just reinforce how important it is to have non-automobile transportation modes be part of the overall picture. I mean, nobody's suggesting that automobiles are going to go away anytime soon. We've spent about the last 50 or 60 years in America essentially planning, designing, and building ourselves into an automobile-dominated system. But now we're starting to see some of the effects of that, and we have countermeasures that we can apply through community planning and through site design to mitigate some of the effects. So the little diagram over on the right, there's all kinds of versions of these floating around, but it talks about environmental, economic, social, and health sustainability and how those all overlap to contribute to an overall community that's sustainable for the long term. Our transportation modes have a lot to do with that, and how we move around affects everything from air quality to our own physical health and longevity. So I'll give you a couple of figures that at this point I have on the top of my head. The Center for Disease Control will tell you that Americans spend about $140 billion a year on healthcare issues related to a sedentary lifestyle and lack of physical activity. So those are very big numbers, and we're all concerned with healthcare costs and impacts on families, on our own checkbooks, and on our communities. So getting people to move is one of the modifiable factors. And if we can integrate a higher level of physical activity into daily routines, we can do a lot to control those healthcare costs. Transportation equity is not so obvious because we think everybody in America has a car or 2, but that's not the case. About 1/3 of Americans don't drive for one reason or another. Some are too young, some are too old, some are disabled, and a large percentage simply can't afford the cost of owning an automobile. So folks who can't drive in our society are really left out of the loop, and that affects everything from employment opportunities to education. So there's a lot of reasons to just open up different opportunities and provide different modes of transportation on an equal basis. So our active transportation plan went through a really pretty straightforward process. We had 3 big questions that we tried to answer. The first one was, what do we have in Irondequoit? And that was the first few months of our study. We're inventorying the existing conditions. That was a database search. That was a site inventory and field verification. There were walking and riding tours with the project committee. As well as we had a very robust public input process. There was an online survey to identify folks' desires and the obstacles they saw towards walking or riding bicycles more. We used location-based crowdsourcing. We designed a custom application that people could bring into their smartphone and help us out in town identify problem areas and gaps in sidewalks and things that they wanted to see improved. So it was, there was a lot of cross-connection and a lot of citizen stakeholders who helped us throughout the process. What do we want was really the needs assessment and what people wanted to see improve. But certainly safety, sustainability, and community connectivity were all top on the menu. And then the third question was, how do we get there? And that was the meat of it. That was our recommendations. And we looked at recommendations for pedestrian, bicycle, and transit connectivity and mobility. We looked at on-road improvements for bicyclists. We looked at off-road improvements in terms of trail connections and enhancing that system. And then finally, we had a section on programs and policies, which is very important because infrastructure alone doesn't do it. We know how to build good infrastructure for bikes, pedestrians, and transit, but you need supportive policies, you need maintenance, you need education, you need enforcement of regulations that keep people safe. So all these things have to work together, and if you're missing one piece, the whole puzzle really isn't going to come together. So that's what the active transportation plan was about. It was a fairly inclusive and cohesive exercise that touched on all these things. So in terms of town code, we looked at the existing town code as it relates to bicycle and pedestrian facilities. We made some recommendations about things that might want to change in the future. One of our key references was the bicycle and pedestrian supportive code language that was actually produced by GTC several years ago. That's included in the plan as an appendix. It's a great resource. They have kind of some templates that you can look at and see how that would apply to eventually amending your own town code. They also have a lot of case studies from peer communities. So other places around New York State that have made changes to better support pedestrian and bicycle mobility. And then they have a number of these fact sheets which look at specific elements for active transportation and policies that can support it. So all of that is in the plan. It's available to you guys as a reference. And we try to just make we try to make a good compilation of the existing resources that might help you do your own jobs. And then we made a special tool for Irondequoit. It's a checklist. This is what I handed out. And this took us some time, and it started out to be like way too many pages because there's a lot of this information out there from a variety of sources across the country. But eventually, I think we distilled it down to 4 pages, which is not too bad. And it's a kind of a quick cheat sheet. And if a site plan proposal comes in, you can quickly go through this and look at the general categories, maybe zone in on some specific issues for that submittal. But it's a good overview and it's a good place to start. It doesn't answer all the questions about how things need to be detailed and specific design recommendations, but it gives you an idea of what to look for and what's important to build into a site plan so that there is full accessibility, and we're starting to connect the community with projects that allow for the full range of mobility. So The kind of pink tone, the magenta tone, are, if you just have to look for one or two, those are the hot items. And you want to kind of check those first. And then beyond that, they're all there's no particular priority to how they're stacked in there. But in each category, you'll see a few things to pay particular attention to. So it's broken into sections for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for transit. We have a section for access and parking, which is a key issue. We have a section for landscape and open space. Now that's specifically how it relates to pedestrian and bicycle movement, as well as lighting. And again, that's really focused on the safety for pedestrians and bikes. And buildings, meaning siting and location, again, for full range of active transportation movement. So that's now it's in your hands. It's also in the report as an appendix. And we hope that's sort of just a really easy tool to get started with how to consider active transportation in a site plan. So then I've got a few examples from around Monroe County. There may be a laser pointer here, but I'm scared I'm going to turn it off, so I'm not going to do it. But you know what? This is I don't have to hide anything here. This is in the town of Brighton. But you start to see where zoning codes can lead you. And all zoning code is really well intentioned. It's there for public health, public safety. But sometimes it can have adverse effects that aren't anticipated. This is the area, kind of the intersection of Elmwood and South Clinton. So it's South Clinton corridor between Westfall Road and Elmwood. And you can see just how developments are coming into play over time. But if you're a pedestrian living in one of these places, you're going to have a really hard time getting where you want to go. And you'd have to go back to the specific code of that town to realize how this happened, because they're all fully code compliant. But one, there was never a master plan for the area, which that happens all the time. Not everywhere is master planned. But you had the developments coming in somewhat organically, and then there was nothing to really push to get them to connect to each other. And that's why you end up with a situation like this. I'll give you the portable mic so you can... Okay, that'd be great.
I think this is live.
Yeah,
Okay.
that works.
There you go.
All right.
And then you can
So
walk.
now I can move around a little bit. So here's a multifamily residential development. Here's a plaza with a Tops, a supermarket, lots of other retail and services that people would want to get to. Right there, there's actually a signalized intersection. But if you live here, the only way to get there, if you wanted to walk, would be go all the way out to Elmwood Avenue, do a couple of crossings, and come all the way back South Clinton. So there is no walkable path from here to here. And then there's several other non-connections. Nothing goes through. This doesn't connect to this. You know, you can just sort of look at them one by one and understand that each one is probably a pretty good site plan, but there's nothing there to pull it all together and make it an environment that supports, encourages people to do anything other than drive their cars. Since everybody's driving their cars, there's more parking demand and there's more infrastructure needs. So it becomes more expensive and less healthy for the town. However, also in Brighton, they've done some very good things in some of the older neighborhoods. And Edgemore and Ashbourne are they're really two parallel streets in the same neighborhood, but somewhere along the line, planned in were these little connections between the two streets. So somebody was thinking right, and as the subdivisions were planned, there was enough of an easement space left that you could connect one subdivision and one development to another. So kids on a play date don't have to get in the car with mom and drive all the way out to the main road and around and come back in. They can simply walk down their street and take a nice pedestrian safe pedestrian connection and move around that way. So those are the kinds of things that it's great to program into a residential subdivision when you can. We noted that Arundecoit has a lot of that going on. So the micro trails, as we like to call them in Arundecoit, we categorize some of those. We map the ones that we could find. We make recommendations for some new ones. So there's some of these real neat kind of under the radar connections and passageways out there. You just want to encourage more of those because people trying to walk find them. People on bikes find them. If you can formalize them and make them safe and convenient, you're going to reduce the number of car trips, which is taking the pressure off the whole system. So you've heard the term complete streets, and that's simply designing an environment that gives equal consideration to all modes of travel. Recognizing that automobiles will be the prime mode of travel, the dominant mode of travel, but that should not be to the exclusion of the other ways we have to get around. So this was out of, it wasn't actually the active transportation plan, but a corridor plan for Route 104 that the GTC did. And the upper image, upper left is the existing conditions. And then this was really just a visual catalog of everything that could happen. And all of these improvements were very feasible. The right-of-way exists. There were really no technical or engineering constraints that would prevent that from happening. But we wanted to make sort of a visual of what that kind of corridor could be and the opportunities it would allow for people of all different levels, all different mobility levels, all different age groups. You'll notice one thing that keeps showing up in some of these visuals are benches and resting spots. That's very important because as your mobility declines, you typically need more opportunities to rest. And, that can be any of us pushing a stroller with little kids. It can certainly be older people. It can be anybody with health challenges. It can be all of us on a hot summer day. The rule we like is a 5-minute walk, and there should be a place to rest. So that's kind of a design standard that's just a good thing to have in the back of your minds. And as you evaluate proposals, you can see if developers are, by chance, providing that with their plan. Not many of them do, but it's not the kind of thing that breaks the bank, and it can make a big difference to pedestrians. So here's Monroe Avenue, close to 12 Corners in Brighton. You'll notice the upper left was existing conditions. This is right at the Central Brighton School campus. So why you would ever put sidewalks right on the curb like that in a school zone just baffles me. But that's quite frankly a horrible placement for a sidewalk for a number of different reasons. I have other pictures that actually show it in a rain event, splashing people on the sidewalk because the drainage isn't perfect, it pulls against the curb. So you're kind of hugging the grass as you tried to walk there. There are a lot of walkers to the schools. That's a high volume, relatively high speed roadway. So with no buffer zone, it's a frightening environment and sort of the opposite of supporting and encouraging pedestrian movement. Over the last couple of years, the town of Brighton has received funding to do some retrofit and some upgrades along Monroe Avenue. So that's the same spot in the lower photo. And with the cooperation of the school district, we were able to move the sidewalks about 30 feet inboard into the school campus. So a much more attractive design. They're wider. They're 7 feet wide, so it's like a really big sidewalk or a small multi-use path. But it works fine for everybody moving, even in the peak times with walking and bicycling to the school. The landscape buffer is green infrastructure, so that's actually helping to drain the roadway and take care of some of the localized ponding that they had. So, that's just sort of a good sidewalk placement and good site design, and then what was there before was not so good. The little blue box has information on pedestrian level of service. So for the Arundecoit Active Transportation Plan, we did both pedestrian level of service and bicycle levels of service analysis. That's sort of a standard national level protocol for seeing how good your roadways, your environments are for bike and pedestrian travel. And what's interesting here is we did the level of service prior to construction, and Monroe Ave received basically a low D. And then we went back and ran the analysis again, looking at all the different criteria after the sidewalks were removed and the landscaping was redone, and it moved up to a B. So there's also a numerical scale, and that was basically a 40% improvement in level of service just from doing these changes. What the level of service tells you is it's kind of a predictor of how much pedestrian trips you're going to bring in based on the type of environment that you're providing. So that was a big improvement, and that's just a good way to kind of document the impacts. So sidewalk design, your sidewalk should be continuous. The upper photo, and this is not unusual, sidewalk stops at the driveway and then starts up on the other side of the driveway. The lower photo, you can see that the sidewalk continues right through the driveway. So at least it's giving equal footing and kind of an intuitive signal that there may be pedestrians in the driveway. And interestingly enough, those two pictures are, a half mile apart from each other. So I'm pretty sure they're both the town of Penfield, which is interesting because it should have been the same review, same code, but the two developments ended up very different. The lower photo on the left also, you can see that they did very nice connections from the sidewalk along the road right to the building entrances. And that's where the public-private collaboration has to come in. Even if we do complete streets and apply best practices and have all these facilities along the public right-of-way, if there's nothing to connect it to the destination, you basically have a discontinuous path and you block the access. And then you'll see that that lower photo does indicate a bus stop, so there was good connectivity from the transit stop on the sidewalks right to the buildings and people's destinations. So that worked out pretty well. The sidewalk photo on the lower right is actually, I think we're back in Brighton. So this is right near Legacy at Clover, which is a very big senior living development. And they did a great job with the sidewalks in and around that senior living development. They took pains. They didn't take the easy way out. They moved the sidewalk kind of in and around some existing trees. That probably added some costs. There's certainly more linear footage in there than just taking a straight shot. But it's overall a much more attractive pedestrian environment. So you're going to invite more people, and those sidewalks get a lot of use. And I think that's especially valuable in the direct vicinity of a senior living complex.
Well, I just wanted to add one note on that lower left image. What you can't see is that the parking lots are all connected to the rear.
It's great, yeah.
And so in this area, you can, getting from one establishment to the other, you don't have to go back out onto the main roads. You can navigate to every single neighboring business through connections to back parking lots. And it's not necessarily an alternative, like it's not a parallel road, but every parking lot is connected. So you never have to get back onto, that's 441.
That's right.
That's Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. So those are big generators. But you can go there and other places and even get to neighboring streets without ever having to go back onto 441.
Yeah, it's a really great example of good access management, and it makes all the difference. 441 is still kind of a mess, but these developments did what they could to make it safe and accessible for people. So that's a pretty positive example. I think lighting design is one of the things that we ask you to look for in the checklist. That obviously has safety impacts. It also has community character impacts. And good lighting, even the pedestrian scale lighting, which is focused on safety for pedestrians, really makes it safer for everybody. So when you make things better for bicyclists and pedestrians, you're also making things better for people in the cars. That's a good thing to look at. Your zoning code has its own regulations for lighting and different applications. Lighting almost all is LED now, so we're handling the energy consumption. Dark skies compliant lighting is something to think about. But, you know, the thing is, just think about it as something you have to do, but think about it as something that can really add to the project and have some positive impacts. So parking lot design is huge. I think it's a very overlooked aspect of site development. You know, we tend to consider parking lots as purely temporary storage for automobiles, but they don't have to be that, and they are in fact much more than that. The parking lot is the place you arrive. A lot of times it's your first impression of somewhere that you're visiting. These are two different parking lots at RIT, and RIT is very tied into, they're in a competitive market. So their campus environment is really their bread and butter, and they are actually going back and retrofitting some of their existing surface parking areas. So the parking lot on the left is what you don't want to have happen. And that's the old S-lot parking area, which is a really big one. I think it's about 400 cars. And quite simply, it's oriented the wrong way. So with all the destinations are in the direction this guy's walking, but the drive lanes go the other direction. So you basically just end up walking through all these rows of cars to get where you're going. So that's sort of the number one no-no in parking lot design. At least use the aisles as a pedestrian way that's sort of oriented the way people are trying to go. There's a great book called Rethinking a Lot. It's about the design and culture of parking. That reference is there. You know, and they have some astounding numbers about automobiles and surface parking areas. But in some cities in the U.S., more than 1/3 of the land area is dedicated to parking. So that is just crazy. RIT has about 90 acres of surface parking area. So big numbers. And that has all kinds of environmental impacts. I mean, you think about the stormwater that's generated from that much impervious surface. It's tremendous. That's a big concern for RIT. Their campus is embedded within a pretty robust wetland system. So stormwater management is a big thing. So they actually had to expand S-Lot because they built a new ice arena, and that displaced about 200 parking spaces. So they had to pick that up somewhere. They expanded S-Lot, but they did it quite differently than the existing one. So the snapshot on the right is of the new S-Lot, which is built to a totally different standard. It uses a lot of islands to channel movement. It has some pedestrian facilities embedded in it for safe movement through the parking lot. It targeted a certain number of trees and their projected canopy to manage urban heat island effect. And you know, it is a green parking lot, if you want to call it that, but it's also a much more pleasant experience to move through. And it's actually kind of fun. You don't mind parking on the far side of that lot because it's a nice walk to get where you're going. So parking lots really can be done a lot better than we normally do them. And it's nice if you can push developers a little bit and see what you can get out of them. The argument always is costs, and I need as many parking spaces as possible. But there's a happy medium. So there's sort of a quality versus quantity equation that you can come to and have that be right for a particular development. This is the City Hall parking lot, downtown, City of Rochester. So they had an existing lot and applied for grant funding to rebuild it and retrofit it to meet some sustainability standards. There's all kinds of things built into this lot, including charging stations for electric cars. There's ADA accessibility that's way above the minimum level. They built, about 2/3 of it were built with pervious asphalt, so the water infiltrates through the pavement into a stone reservoir below. They left about 1/3 of it as standard asphalt, and that's mostly for snow storage and places for them to plow the snow in the winter. And then they integrated rain gardens around the outside edges that serve two big purposes. One is to handle stormwater from the conventional asphalt, and the second is to upgrade the streetscape for the surrounding streets. So that's the edge of the lot. That's Allen Street. That's Nicole, my model. Yeah. But you can see that it's just a pedestrian environment, and this is close to our office, so I walk by here. I keep an eye on this landscape since we worked on it. But you can see people actually taking a walk just to come to this place and look at the rain gardens. So now you're doing more than allowing for pedestrian movement. You're actually creating places where people want to walk to the next level. So ideally, every new development in Arundecoit should be a place that people want to walk to, right? So that's just something to keep in your head, and it doesn't take a lot. Again, it was the funding that paid for the stormwater management that put in these streetscape elements, but they served several different purposes, so you get a lot of bang for the buck. So I like this parking lot. This is Dick's in Henrietta. And they actually went above and beyond and included some really good pedestrian features into this parking lot, specifically those protected walkways that help you get from your car to the front door. And you can see there's 2 main concrete walkways. They also did a good job with the planting islands. Those help as refuges for pedestrians. They do provide some shade in the summer. But you just look at it and, it's not quite as overwhelming and quite as oppressive as some mall parking lots. So pretty good job on this, very functional, and also fairly attractive. Facilities at destinations. So bicycle parking is something that your code can support. There's all kinds of examples of this in the active transportation plan. LEED guidelines we're familiar with for LEED certified buildings. There's also LEED for neighborhood development. So there's a lot of national level design guidance for things like bicycle parking now. The photo on the upper left is the library. Great job on that. So covered bicycle parking is great. I mean, it just gives a message that bicycles are being encouraged. You may swing people if they're thinking about riding or not riding on a little bit of a drizzly day, if they know their bikes are going to stay dry. They're not terribly expensive, but they raise the level of bicycles from sort of an afterthought to a legitimate transportation mode. So those shelters are great at the library. Overall, the whole pedestrian network at the library is quite good. So you got a nice role model right there. We recently installed indoor on-the-wall bicycle racks in our office because we were getting more and more people riding to work. So that's the center photo there. Those are really cool. We have 6 of them. We have plans for 6 more. We share those with the other offices in the building, so anybody can use them. We have preference, of course, but anybody else can use them. And just this last round, we applied for and received bicycle-friendly business designation from the American League of Bicyclists. So, that's where it goes beyond infrastructure. And we try to nudge our company to do things to encourage people to use alternative transportation to get to work. And then the last one is a simple bike rack on the outside. Those are provided by the city of Rochester, and they actually have it up on their website. If you want to request that they install a rack, you just fill out a simple form, which I did. And within just a few weeks, they came and put racks outside our office. So that's the city government just doing their bit to encourage bicycle use in the city. So transit, that was a focus on the active transportation plan too, because there's a very close relationship between public transit and pedestrians. Every ride on a bus starts and ends with walking. And these days, it may start and end with bicycling, since all the RTS buses are now equipped with bike racks, and a lot of them are maxed out on many routes. Good consideration of transit facilities and connecting those facilities to destinations are really important. This is part of that same Monroe Avenue project where we showed the sidewalk relocation by the school. We selected 4 transit stops on Monroe Avenue for enhancements. This is the overall plan. These are the bus canopies. So we would call these not primary stops, but probably secondary stops. They're not fully enclosed shelters. but they're more comfortable than just standing by the side of the road. So the minimum is a full accessible concrete pad from the curb to the shelter, overhead shelter, a bench, and space for wheelchair access. The tricky thing here was this funding was from New York State Environmental Facilities Corps, and it all had to do with stormwater management. So the reason we got the bus stop canopies paid for is we're harvesting the water off the roof into a rain garden planter. So it's a green infrastructure bus stop, and that's the way the town got it funded, which was kind of tricky, but it's a good upgrade to the transit on Monroe Avenue. And then, you know, those are some statistics. People who use transit typically walk a lot more than the rest of us. So for that reason alone, it's good to encourage transit use. And even if it's not, you're giving up your car, but if you can use transit a couple of times a week, once a month, that accumulates incrementally. And this is just about a month ago. First one is just getting installed. Again, we start by the schools, and we try to do most of the improvements in the school zones, and then move out from there. So this is Northgate Plaza on Dewey Ave in the town of Greece. Interestingly enough, Northgate Plaza was one of the very first suburban retail shopping malls in the United States. So outside of downtown, this was one of the first ones that got built. So, you know, historically, that's sort of the beginning of suburban sprawl. Maybe not a good thing, but they've had to go back. You know, it saw its heyday. It went downhill. It was pretty sketchy for quite a while. The town of Greece did a Dewey Avenue corridor study, which included some design guidelines for new development. And eventually Walmart Supercenter came in as the new anchor, and they basically redid the whole site. But what I want to point out is, after much discussion, rather than dropping people off on Dewey Avenue and having them truck through an inhospitable parking lot, this is the main bus stop. So they actually able to work that out with RTS to bring the buses into the mall and drop people off very close to their main destination. And then good, solid pedestrian connectivity from the stop to the stores. So I know that was, you know, that was a lot of negotiation, and it was their planning board fighting pretty hard for a few of the things they wanted to see. Didn't get everything, but that's an above average site design, and very conscious of active transportation. So small success story in the town of Greece. So not so successful back in Henrietta. USA Street Blogs nominates the sorriest bus stop in America every year. And the town of Henrietta ended up on that dubious list. They were one of two finalists last year, and the other one, coincidentally, was in Buffalo. So Rochester and Buffalo were tops in the nation for bad bus stops. Yeah, it's perfect. So, I mean, here you see it. This is a bus stop on Highland Drive at the Wegmans. There's not even a paved pad. That's just worn off grass, which turns into a mud pit. They do have a sign. There's no seating. But worst of all, there's just no way to get from there to the store that you want to go to. Heavily used by students from RIT. And of course, if you're going to Wegmans, you're probably at least one way there walking back there with a bunch of bags of groceries. So quite a number of reasons that this is not a good situation. I had a bunch of quotes from the blog in there about how bad and derelict the town of Henrietta was for approving this, but I took it out because I wasn't sure where this presentation was going. However, usastreetblog.org, you can check it out. There's a whole article about it, but it basically it did specifically blast the town of Henrietta. It blasted Wegmans for not being more supportive and proactive considering some of the objectives they profess to. And it blasted Monroe County DOT, who has jurisdiction on this roadway. Because along with no good bus stop, there's no sidewalk on a very, very heavily used retail zone. So, you know what, there's really no excuse for that, and we can all do better. And this is being improved as we speak. There's plans for sidewalks. So I guess they got nudged by the blog a little bit. Most of the bus stops in Arundecoit are quite a bit better. The active transportation plan does target a few and make some suggestions for improvements. We work very closely with RTS. We had a lot of dialogue with them. We pushed them, they pushed back. We showed a couple ideas that went a little too far. They came back to us. But now, we're at a level where, we're giving some very solid recommendations and suggestions for how to improve the pedestrian and transit connectivity at some of the key spots in Arundecoit. We included the Gleason Circle bus stop at RIT as a model bus stop. That is a really heavily used stop. That had more ridership than any other stop in the RTS system at the time it was installed. That was prior to the transit center downtown. But that thing is really deluxe. I mean, the shelter is actually heated inside for people during the winter. It has benches both inside when you want to be inside and outside when you want fresh air. I mean, there's all kinds of things built into it. But it's nice to look at what can be provided to transit users if people think it's important enough to put the money into it. And then this was a prototype bus stop sketch for one of our key stops in Arundecoit. And again, it's kind of this adds to the idea of a complete street, just that transit stops should be providing a base level of accommodation and then well connected to where people are trying to get to. So thinking about comfort, safety, going beyond just providing the base things and actually creating an environment that encourages people to use non-motorized transportation. And then the last thing I wanted to say on that is the statistic I love, and this comes from the GTC, that in this area about 60%, 60-some% of automobile trips are less than 5 miles. So most of the time you're getting in the car, you're going somewhere that you might well be able to get there by some other means. So it's all about mode shift, just shifting small percentages of short distance automobile trips to some other transportation mode can make a big difference in the community. I think that's the end.
Oh, thank you, Tom. And just for the board's, we just have a final draft document. It's too large to email, but I have a link that I'll be sending you all. We wanted to make sure that we circulated it to the county DOT is reviewing the final draft, and the town board just got it at their workshop meeting just a week ago or so. So I can send the link so that you'll have a copy of the draft. And then when it's fine, I mean, we're not anticipating significant changes. There might be some minor adjustments to the document at this point, but it's pretty solid as far as the recommendations go. And we can make sure that you have it so it's a reference and a resource if you need it or want it. So thank you, Tom. I appreciate the
My pleasure.
the presentation. And if you guys have any questions, and we can now, or if you want to ask questions anytime, you can certainly email me.
Once approved, these will be guidelines.
Yeah, so it's an active transportation plan. There are recommendations in it. Certainly something that this board can look to, but it's not codified. Although someday.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome.
As far as we can, but we can't deny anything.
Thank you very much.
They gave them to us at the work.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes?
They're right in front of me.
Did you guys get a chance to look at these? Or?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you did? Do we have enough to vote?
Yeah,
He can't.
I can't because I wasn't involved.
2, 3,
We can wait,
4.
I mean,
There's 4 of us. We could It's enough, right?
It's just Michelle.
Michelle, is 4 enough?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Then I would say.
Because we have Bernie, Wayne
One,
Evelyn,
two,
Mary
three.
Howard Beck, Brad Huber, and Spencer Reed.
But Spencer said he didn't get a chance to read them.
Yeah,
That's
Oh,
I didn't realize they were in my packet from the last meeting.
So 4 is enough. I'm ready to go.
okay.
Okay.
Assuming it's unanimous.
Assuming it's unanimous. So- We're looking at the minutes from January, correct? January 30th, 2017? Would somebody like to make a motion on those? I'll make a motion to approve them as is. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And for the minutes dated February 27th, 2000, oh, do I need to take a vote? Sorry. So for the ones dated January 30th, 2017, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. And those abstain.
I will abstain since I didn't read through these, I'm sorry.
And for the minutes dated February 27th, 2017, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions?
I will abstain again, Mr. Chairman.
Both of those pass, Michelle.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
I make
That's my
motion.
favorite motion. Motion to close the meeting.
I'll second that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Meeting closed.